So this is even coming, I mean, I'm looking at the fact that you're a member of the All Progressives Congress. You don't see any steps by this government being taken to match the words that it has spoken to the people of the Niger Delta with action.
No, I have commended the dialogue, but I'm saying that governance and leadership must be proactive. I've commended the effort at Georgia, but I'm saying that we must walk the talk. I've commended the latitude of the vice president and the presidency for programmatic engagement of the people. But I am saying that rather than propaganda, we must do performance.
My question is, you're not seeing anything in a direction that shows that action is being taken. That's what I'm asking.
I want to see the cleanup of Ogoniland. I want to see the takeoff of the university.
But the cleanup of Ogoniland is in progress.
Where and how?
From what
the people have said that not up to 5% of work is ongoing in the space. That is more of politics and political correctness than performance. I think that, like I noted, Mokwe, it's country first. With my country is my honor, tribute, destiny, commitment, and determination. I believe that this presidency can do better than it's doing in that space. And I believe that only by turning the Niger Delta space into a huge construction site can you maintain peace in that region.
Gimba has questions for you from Lagos.
Well, Mr. Nwokobia, could you explain when you said in your opening sequence that the government engages the elders in the Niger Delta? Because it will seem to suggest that there is a deal in place between the elders of the Niger Delta and the government.
The truth is that every so often you talk about the Niger Delta space, those who threaten the space are predominantly the youths. And they have come out repeatedly. The Ijaw Youth Council have said that. Several other groups have said that. The Congress of Niger Delta activists and the ex-militants have said that. Every so often they enter into dialogue and negotiations with government. The elders will lead the way, and there is either no continuity or no concrete performance a la the agreements that they reach with government. And I think that the engagements must involve all the tendencies in the Niger Delta, because we cannot continue to live every year one threat after another. The economy atrophies, the system goes comatose, and we cannot continue because the masses of our country and the ordinary people need better life.
Would you then say that the elders of the Niger Delta are the ones hurting their people because the government has kept to its own side of this bargaining?
I think that it is extremely benevolent to say that government has kept on its side of the bargain.
Let me clarify that. Let me clarify that for you, because you did hear in that report we played when the vice president, who at some point before, when the president was ill and he was vice president, he was acting president at the time, he visited nearly almost every other state in the Niger Delta area. He made some promises, and one of which is that the Amnesty program that is currently ongoing is largely supported by this government than any other past government. Is that a good place to start?
I have said, and I repeat, when I met with the Amnesty Committee when it started, I told them that rather than throw cash and monies, turn that space to a huge construction site. That's point number one. And government repeatedly have failed to do that. When in 2011 I ran for the presidency of this country, I said that the first thing to do is to turn the space that produces our resources to a huge construction site. And I have repeatedly written about it. And I do sincerely believe that it is not just about money for a few young men and amnesty monies for ex-militants. It is one of the least things to do and to contemplate. What that space needs is sufficient government impact and presence such that the young boys and their parents will have no reason to agitate. Until you do what is needful and right, this agitation will continue. And let me say this, that is why those who are calling for restructuring, like me, are saying that the time has come to devolve power to the constituent parts so that the people can hold their leaders responsible for what is happening in that space. Save and except that is done, save and except we return the paradigms of ownership in this country, our quest for the good republic will be like the search for Godot. But I say this advisedly, that I know the government is listening. The time to live and walk the talk is now.
So then, would you subscribe to cancelling that amnesty program?
I think that the way to go is begin effective infrastructural development of that space. And once you begin that, you cancel the amnesty program.
So you subscribe to restructuring. Do you sincerely believe
Absolutely.
that restructuring will get us out of this confusion in the Niger Delta?
I do totally believe that restructuring is like a silver bullet that will do a whole lot about this country. It will attenuate the conflict and the crisis in the Niger Delta. Because what you do when you restructure is shift ownership to the people. And then the people will begin to hold their leaders responsible. They will begin to hold their leaders accountable. Then we'll have a new regime of responsible and responsive leadership. Then we will cease to have this alibi of governors blaming the federal government for not promptly releasing funds. Then you will have people who, rather than threaten Abuja, will sit in front of their government houses and local government offices and ensure that their leaders at the local level impact positively on the space.
Just wondering then, if, I mean, looking at restructuring, because there have also been warnings as to how this is not going to be a cure-all for, you know, for the ailment that we currently face. But if you look at the threats, do you think that we'll ever get to the end? I mean, to a time where, you know, people are not issuing threats?
I am positively engaged in ensuring that our people think right and stop threatening. But let me say this, that I'm faithfully interested in seeing government turning that space to a huge construction site. And when that happens, you will have no reason to agitate. But let me say this,
but that is
restructuring, restructuring is actually almost a cure paradigm. Because what you do is when power devolves to the constituent parts, you find people who otherwise, maybe if you don't have oil, you go back to the farms. You see the return of the pyramids of granite and hides and skin in the north. You see the return of cocoa and the silos of cocoa in the southwest. You see the return of our monstrous wealth, and people go back to the farm, get jobs, and at the end of the day, several agitations that trouble this country. You have the military almost everywhere engaging in trying to keep the peace. You don't need to keep the peace when people are engaged. And that's exactly why when we advocate restructuring, we're not saying that anybody is a loser or anybody will lose. We're saying that everybody is a win-win paradigm.
Well, you talk about turning the Niger Delta to a massive construction site, and a lot of people will agree with you. But then you also know that people need to be trained. People need to have skills to be able to benefit from, you know, whatever economy comes out of turning the Niger Delta into a massive construction site. From what you know,
let's be simplistic enough, please.
Yes, from what you know of the Niger Delta, and from what you know of how, you know, things have evolved over time in terms of youth agitations, would you really say that you believe that the reasons that have been given by the Niger Delta Avengers is the real reason for their threatening to, you know, go back to the creeks?
I'm not a clairvoyant, but I know that there are valid reasons for threats. I'm not a clairvoyant, but I know that the people have sufficient reason to agitate. I'm not a clairvoyant, but I know that that space is left almost unattended. But I know that there is hope in the horizon. And what government must do is engage the people. And then in terms of training, you have, if you look at it simplistically, you don't have, all over the world, every citizen must not be a professional or must not be really trained. You have masons, you have those who fetch water in construction sites, you have several things people can do. When you turn that space into a huge construction site, those who are not professionals will have some jobs to do. You will essentially attenuate and diminish the army of the unemployed who continue every so often to threaten the space.
If you speak with some governors in the Niger Delta, they will tell you about how some youths are used to free money, and that when free money is not coming in, then there's also the resort to violence. I'm simply asking, do you also think that the fact that perhaps this largesse is not as big as it ought to be, or maybe it's not coming in as frequently as it ought to, could also be part of the fueling these agitations?
Free money is a result of the poor policy articulation regarding intervention in the Niger Delta. And it is never too late to do what is right. Rather than throw monies at people, engage the people. Rather than throw monies at the people, begin huge development of that space. Rather than throw money at the people, ensure that those who have looted their resources at the level of the NDDC and other interventionist agencies are held, tried, and we must make monuments of reference and monuments of deterrence. When we do that, our effort at ensuring that we diminish the embers of crisis and conflicts and agitations will become prime and profound.